Hey everyone, let's talk about kind of how this skirt's going to work out. So I've got my pattern here. I'm going to set it to the side. We're going to need it in a few minutes. I've got some ballpoint pins. Really important for ballpoint this time, especially going through the foam and your stretchy fabric, your lycra or spandex, whatever it is that you've got. The ballpoint pins just make it really easy to go through. I keep mine on a separate color pin dish from my regular pins just so it's easier to find. And I really like the magnetic ones so I'm not chasing them all over the place or going crazy. If you've got some Stitch Perfection tape, this could come in really handy. I've got the 1/2 inch here. And we're going to kind of get started and show you what I mean. So you should have already stitched the shape of your tentacle on the back side using that chalk outline that we drew as a guide. Excuse mine, I've got a couple shapes here. I was playing with some stuff, but I know my red stitching on the back here is actually the stitching I'm going to want to follow. So I'm going to set this to the side for just a moment. I'm going to grab my stretchy fabric, my knit, my lycra. I'm going to put it pretty side face up. Quite frankly, in this particular piece, there's not a big difference, so it probably wouldn't actually matter. And this has really great stretch both directions, so it's going to have what we want the top of this to do to get our excellent bell shape. So I've got this laid out. I'm going to put this on here pretty side down. And now you have to make some decisions. Are you going to take your ballpoint pins and starting on this side, just kind of pin across that seam line that you have going? Or are you going to take your Stitch Perfection tape, peel off a piece of it, and stick it down underneath so it stays? A combination of the two is probably the best way to go, but what we're going to want to do is get this pinned. Leave this all as one great big piece right now. It will make the process of getting that twirly part down at the bottom way easier to get sewn. So just go ahead, give this a pin the whole way around. You're going to take it back to your sewing machine and remember that line of stitching you just ran. You're going to stitch either right on top of it or just to the inside of it, so that way you can easily trim this out to the shape that we've got and save yourself a lot of hassle with trying to deal with two pieces shifting. That's why we've left it as one right now. After you have all that stitched is when you're going to go back. You're going to trim this down to your, 1/4, 1/2 inch seam allowance, whichever you're more comfortable with. The next thing that's really important is where your fabric and your seam allowance come together, and you can see I've already kind of pulled mine apart here a little. You are going to want to pull your regular cotton fabric away from the foam, and you are going to want to trim this foam out of the seam allowance. If you don't trim the foam out of the seam allowance, it's not a big deal up here at the top of the bell, but once you get down into the curlicue, it gets really kind of twisty and shifty and that kind of stuff. So we're going to go ahead and do all of that, and then after you have this done, trimmed, etc., make sure that you've made note of where the curve on your pattern pieces. So in this case, these are the 2 points that were denoted my mini skirt, but it looks like I got to come back up to my corners about 2 inches above it. Stop stitching this outside the outside black and your tentacle piece together at these points, so that way they work as 2 separate items, so you can put the outer skirt and the underskirt together separately.